Nice to hear how Jim said yesterday at our meeting, anytime he would ask Joe to show up, he showed up. So that relationship is there, and I think Joe and Jim will be able to maintain that relationship while Pat, Joe Linton, I, and Steve negotiate a deal, and I think that's huge.
Ozzie, I want to ask you a question about the franchise tag. I assume you won't tell us which level you put on with Joe, the high one where you keep him, or the lower one where you could lose him to 2 first-round picks. Could you tell us how that whole process works, whether or not if you put him with a lower one, the team would just give up their 2 consecutive first-rounders? And when you've done it in the past, which route did you go with Bellotti and Suggs and McAllister and guys like that? And whether or not teams historically have lost players at all if they went the route where they could lose them to 2 first-rounders?
Well, you kind of explained it yourself. I mean, if you put the low 10 on, it's 2 first-round picks. And I don't know if any team did, but you have to look at is what the Redskins did this past year to move up to get Robert Griffin. You know, if someone thinks that a quarterback is that valuable, and I'm sure you can talk to Bruce and Mike and Mr. Snyder, and they're very happy with RG3 right now, and they don't mind not having those draft picks. So I can't monitor, I don't know what 31 other teams are doing, so we got to prepare ourselves for it. And then we also know what the exclusive tag does. You know, it puts them out where it basically takes them off the market. Those are some of the things that we'll talk about, but I'm coming away today thinking that we can get a deal done. You know, we've got deals done with Elodie, J.O., Ray Rice. I mean, you know, we've gotten big time to Suggs. You know, I got a very good owner he understands the business. He understands the importance of certain positions. So I'm optimistic. But you know what? Which tag we'll use, we don't know. We'll be prepared for either scenario.
Right, Eric? This is John. With Ray retiring, you know he's got plans to go watch his son, maybe do television. Are there any plans that he'd be around as a coach? Have you talked to him or even a tutor just to be around and help?
Well, you know, all the guys that play here come back often, you know, and they talk to players, and they're always welcome. Of course, Ray would be no less than that, you know. We have talked about it. He knows he's always welcome. He has not expressed an interest to coach. I have asked him, and he's not interested. But Ray, we talked about Ray's iconic. He's going to be doing so many just amazing and powerful things, and he's excited about those things.
Eric, John, how is Ray doing? Is he doing okay? He was not on crutches, moving around all right. He got to do it there. And is Jameel McClain making progress? And you feel good about his opportunity?
Elodie, yeah, nothing serious with Elodie. There's some things in there we'll just have to see, but it won't be anything that should keep him out of training camp or anything like that. And Jameel, we're still looking at Jameel. I'm very optimistic based on what Ozzie shared with us yesterday. We're very optimistic about that.
Jeff?
John, Ozzie, you had mentioned a couple players you said retiring, plural. Other than Ray, are there other players that you have an idea that may not have voiced to you that they may not be coming back?
Not officially.
Morgan?
You said Joe's the priority. You hope it gets done. If he does, who becomes next for the tag?
Well, you know, that's what we will take the time for the tag. Oh, I don't think if we get a deal done with Joe, we will not franchise another player. We will not do that. You okay with that, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
That's one less thing you have to talk about. Constant communication. Ryan?
Steve, can you just talk about what you saw from Joe Flacco this year and the progress that he made?
Yeah. You know, I think John's better off explaining that, but I saw a guy just maturing the way we would expect him to mature. I mean, we were sitting here last year and I said the same thing, you know, a husband, a father, familiarity with what we're asking him to do, all those things work in his favor. And, you know, I said last year I didn't expect him to change, and he is who he is, and his demeanor we're very comfortable with. We don't need to be a screamer. And I said I believe that the fans will be rewarded because of Joe's demeanor, and Joe will be appreciated for it if he wins, and we believe he's going to continue to win. So Joe proved that you can win being like Joe, and we're thrilled because we never thought we needed to change the way Joe was, like some of you all or some of our fans, and now he gets to say, I told you so. So you can be like Joe and you can win. I told the national guys after the Super Bowl that night, I said he went to the Eli Manning School of Disrespect. And, they gave Eli the same business, and now he's got 2 Super Bowls and Peyton's got 1. So we'll let Joe do it his way.
Dick, have you had a chance with your staff to talk about Tuesday, the celebration, the good, maybe some of the things that didn't go as well, or maybe just in hindsight, if you create sort of a folder to say, hopefully we do this again next year, here's the good and the things we can improve on?
Well, the good was just the energy of the crowd, the size of the crowds. I've never seen anything like that. I don't think any of us had seen anything like that. I don't think any NFL team had a celebration quite like that, with that type of crowd, as large as it was, both on the streets and in the stadium. So it was amazing, and it was. I know our players were moved by it, deeply moved by it. I think, with the benefit of hindsight, we did not anticipate the size of that crowd. I don't think the police anticipated the size of that crowd. I think the police did an extraordinarily good job of controlling the crowd and avoiding any major safety issues. So I think they are to be applauded for that. I think in the future, if we had to do it again, we would have a ticketed event at the stadium. It would be free tickets, but we would hand out tickets so people would know they could get into the stadium. If you didn't have a ticket, you couldn't go. And I think that was probably the major potential safety issue. And next time we do this, we'll know better.
This one may be for Ozzie and Steve. You guys are always mindful about not putting things on the credit card as far as cap goes, and you've already mentioned that you're not going to redo a bunch of deals just to repeat, but there is availability for cap space, specifically with some of your larger ticket players. How do you balance the not credit card versus not much cap space?
Well, I think over the course of the last 2 years, we've probably redid 2 deals. Yonder last year. And the only time we consider restructuring guys' deal is there is a player that comes available that we think has great value and is worth us restructuring the deal to get it done. But it has to be a player that we think has a pretty good chance of playing out his contract. Because that's when you get in trouble. If you restructure a deal, then all of a sudden that player abilities fall off the cliff and you have to let him go. Then you have to eat all that acceleration right away. But we are of the mind right now, I think with the way John and his coaches develop players, the way Eric and Vince and George and those guys go out and collect players, that we got a good nucleus of young players that are still under their first contracts that is going to allow us not to have to be able to do that. But that's something that we'll talk about. And if there is a dynamic player out there, then there is a couple of guys that we could go to. But that's so far, I mean, that's probably our last resort for us.
And I will say that we're more apt to create space to get a few really good veterans for small amounts. That's how Ozzie ends up putting the icing on our cake every year, is that we end up getting those guys like Graham and people like that don't cost a ton. So we know that in order to fill a roster with professionals while we're waiting on the young guys to develop, that last $7 million we have left is probably better spent on 3 veterans instead of 1 dynamic player. And so I'm more open to that when it comes to creating cap room, because he's done such a good job with the last guys we put on the roster in the last couple years, like McKinney and Corey Graham and people like that. So that to me is not being risky, it's being prudent, and we're going to see high-priced guys getting cut. I think it started a couple days ago. You all know them, some of the guys out there. And their team wanted to keep them. They just couldn't. And Keith, you went and talked about 2 years ago when we let Heap and Mason and Kelly Gregg go. I don't. That stands out because maybe it stands out to you or some of the fans, but we were just as drastic last year. I mean, we let Haruki go, we let Zibagowski go, we let Corey Redding go, we let Jared Johnson go, we let a Pro Bowl Ben Grubbs go. We don't have the money for all of them, and the two safeties went and got starting jobs with Carolina and the Colts. So we have to have guys ready to go, and that's what we do. So we've proven it 2 years in a row that we can kind of shock the world and disappoint our fans at the same time by letting some of these guys go, but letting young guys fill in and then going out and getting good values on the free agent market.
4 more questions.